Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. The year is 1862. Henry LeBeau and his ranch hand are driving cattle through a narrow canyon in Nevada's Paradise Range when they hear it, an unearthly moaning emanating from a cedar grove nearby. The ranch hand, a local tribesman, doesn't say a word. He simply turns his horse and gallops away. LeBeau, despite his European skepticism, feels a chill run down his spine. Without hesitation, he follows. Neither man ever returns to that canyon again, and both refuse to speak of what they heard that day. What made these hardened frontier men flee in terror? Was it merely the wind whistling through rock formations? Or was it something more? Perhaps the spectral guardians of one of the American West's most tantalizing lost treasures. Hidden within the rugged landscape of Nevada's Paradise Range lies a secret that has tantalized treasure hunters for over a century. In the northwestern quadrant of Nye County, amidst the jagged terrain surrounding Paradise Peak, there supposedly exists a cave unlike any other in the region. What makes this cavern unique isn't just its rumored contents, but its bizarre acoustics. The internal architecture of the cave allegedly creates strange, haunting sounds when the wind passes through its complex tunnel system, sounds that many have described as moaning, wailing, or howling, giving rise to the cave's ominous nickname. But long before European settlers arrived with their dreams of gold, this cave held profound significance for the indigenous peoples of the region. It wasn't the promise of wealth that made the location special to them, but its spiritual importance. The cave featured prominently in local tribal cosmology. The eerie sounds, which science would attribute to wind passing through the natural geological formations, were believed to be the voices of ancestral spirits. The location was considered sacred ground, with access strictly limited by tribal custom, and knowledge of its existence carefully preserved through oral traditions passed down through generations. When European settlers first arrived in Nevada territory, they encountered indigenous populations who viewed gold very differently than they did. For many Native American tribes, gold held little intrinsic value in their economic systems. It was too soft for tools and weapons, and while it could be used for ornamentation, other more accessible materials often served just as well. But as these indigenous groups observed the newcomers' obsession with the yellow metal and the violence that frequently accompanied it, they began to develop a more complex relationship with gold. They witnessed how settlers would kill for it, how they would destroy mountains to extract it, and how possession of it seemed to drive men to madness. As conflicts between settlers and indigenous peoples intensified, a fascinating strategy emerged among some tribal groups. Rather than engaging in direct and likely futile military confrontation, they opted for a more subversive approach. They would take the settlers' precious gold and hide it. This brings us to one of the most intriguing chapters in the Howling Cave legend, the Downeyville Expedition ambush. In the early days of Nevada's mining boom, small settlements like Downeyville sprouted up wherever promising ore deposits were found. These primitive operations often lacked sophisticated refining capabilities, necessitating the transport of unprocessed gold, dust, nuggets, and flakes to larger facilities. According to local legend, sometime in the mid-1800s, a substantial gold shipment left Downeyville under armed escort. The security detail followed established transportation routes they believed to be safe. They were wrong. A group of indigenous warriors had gathered intelligence about the shipment schedule and had positioned themselves strategically along the transportation corridor. Their assault was swift and decisive. The armed escorts were overwhelmed and none survived to tell the tale. But this wasn't a random act of violence. It was a calculated operation with a specific purpose. After the confrontation, the warriors methodically collected the scattered gold materials. They didn't keep the gold for trading or personal wealth. Instead, they transported it collectively to their sacred cavern, the Howling Cave. There, in a ceremony that merged practical resistance with spiritual significance, they distributed the gold across the cave floor as a tribute to their deities. In this way, what began as a tactical response to European encroachment became imbued with spiritual meaning. The gold, so desperately desired by the settlers, would instead serve the indigenous gods, forever out of reach of those who killed for it. As decades passed and cultures mingled, some individuals found themselves straddling both worlds. Jimmy Graham was one such person, a resident of the small settlement of Berlin with indigenous heritage through his mother's line. Graham had grown up hearing his mother's stories about the sacred cave near Paradise Peak. She had told him of its extensive underground passages and confirmed what many suspected, that it contained a substantial cache of gold accumulated over years of resistance activities. But unlike his ancestors, Graham saw this not as sacred knowledge to be protected, but as an opportunity for personal enrichment. The cultural taboos that had kept the cave's location secret for generations meant little to him compared to the prospect of wealth. Graham identified an elderly woman from his mother's tribe who he believed possessed knowledge of the cave's exact location. His initial approaches were met with firm resistance. The location was sacred, not to be revealed to anyone, especially someone who clearly intended to violate its sanctity for profit. But Graham was persistent. Over months, he attempted to negotiate, offering essential European commodities as incentives. Eventually, he secured a compromise. The woman would help him retrieve some of the gold without actually revealing the cave's location. She would guide him close enough to obtain what he wanted, but the sacred site itself would remain protected. Nature, however, had other plans. The expedition began promisingly enough, with winter snow allowing Graham to track his guide's footprints. But as they ventured deeper into the Paradise Range, an unexpected warm spell brought rain, quickly transforming the snow into mud and completely eliminating their traceable path. The indigenous woman interpreted this sudden change in weather as divine intervention, the spirits protecting their sacred repository. Graham was left with nothing, and his guide, now even more convinced of the cave's spiritual protection, refused any further assistance or negotiation. Not all who sought the cave relied on negotiation. Another Berlin resident, known only as Lewick in historical accounts, chose a far darker path. Lewick had conducted his own independent investigation into the legend. He had explored portions of the Paradise Range and discovered ancient coins, which reinforced his belief in the substantial hidden wealth. Frustrated by his failure to locate the main repository, he decided more aggressive methods were needed. With an unnamed accomplice, Lewick abducted an indigenous woman suspected of knowing the cave's location. Initial verbal interrogation yielded nothing. The woman remained steadfast in her silence. It was then that Lewick made the horrific decision to employ torture. The woman was bound and suspended from a tree, a cruel method designed to induce both physical and psychological distress. Lewick offered temporary relief as manipulation, promising her freedom in exchange for information. Despite the excruciating pain, the captive maintained her silence with extraordinary resilience. Even after a second application of the torturous suspension, she refused to betray her people's sacred trust. Eventually, Lewick and his accomplice, perhaps shaken by the woman's incredible determination or fearing consequences should their actions be discovered, released her and abandoned their search. We now return to the encounter that opened our story, Henry LeBeau's brush with the unknown. LeBeau was no treasure hunter. He was a legitimate businessman, a pioneer ranching entrepreneur whose operations centered near the settlement of Ellsworth. His presence in the Paradise Range that fateful day was for entirely mundane reasons, routine cattle management with his Indigenous employee. Their work had taken them deep into a canyon system near Paradise Peak when they encountered something that defied rational explanation. The moaning sounds that suddenly manifested seemed to originate from a specific cedar grove. LeBeau would later describe the sounds not as howling but as moaning, a distinction that experts suggest might relate to specific wind conditions affecting the cave's acoustic properties. The response from LeBeau's indigenous worker tells us much about the cave's reputation among local tribes. So what are we to make of the Howling Cave legend today? Is there really a fortune in gold hidden somewhere in the Paradise Range? Or is this simply frontier folklore embellished over generations? Join my Patreon community and discover my art print products on my website in the links provided in my description and link above. Also, if you would like a particular image from my videos, give the timestamp for image, and I will upload it to my website and Patreon. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for another Southwest Gold story. Check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists on historical tales, legends, lost gold stories, and adult bedtime stories. If you like a certain image from my videos, tell me in comments and give timestamp. Happy trails. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.